Today, we spend the hour looking at the life and legacy of the Cuban revolutionary leader and former Cuban president, Fidel Castro. He died Friday at the age of 90. He survived 11 U.S. presidents and more than 600 assassination attempts, many orchestrated by the CIA. The Cuban government has declared 9 days of national mourning. Castro had been in poor health since 2006 and formally ceded power to his younger brother, Raul, in 2008. Fidel Castro died 60 years to the day after he, his brother Raul, Che Guevara, and 80 others set sail from Mexico in 1956 to begin what became the Cuban Revolution, to oust the U.S.-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista. Batista fled Cuba in 1959, and the Castros have led Cuba ever since. The Cuban Revolution would inspire revolutionary efforts across the globe and lead Castro to become one of the archenemies of the United States. This is Fidel Castro addressing his fellow Cubans in the 1980s.
Revolución es sentido del momento histórico.
Revolution is having a sense of the moment. It's change everything that must be changed. It's complete equality and freedom. It's to treat and be treated like a human being. It's emancipating ourselves for ourselves and by our own strength. It's challenging the dominant forces inside and outside the country. It's defending our values at any price.
Fidel Castro embraced communism. He called himself a Marxist-Leninist. Washington repeatedly tried to remove him from power with the ill-fated invasion at the Bay of Pigs in 1961 and a decades-long economic embargo. Castro denounced the U.S. blockade of Cuba in the 1988 film The Uncompromising Revolution, directed by Saul Landau and Jack Willis.
For the first 10 years, the revolution had to survive the blockade and create possibilities of development. In these years, basic progress occurred, like eradicating illiteracy, building an educational system, getting schools to remote areas, providing teachers. In those days, we even, quote, improvised teachers because there weren't enough teachers. Plans to train doctors. Of our 6,000 doctors, 3,000 in 1959 were lured to the United States. We have had to face U.S. hostility, the blockade. Great challenges. I think our responses were appropriate.
Across the developing world, Fidel Castro is viewed as a hero who stood up to the United States and assisted Marxist guerrillas and revolutionary governments around the world. In the 1970s, he sent Cuban troops to Angola to support the government over the initial objections of Russia. Cuba helped defeat South African insurgents in Angola and win Namibia's independence from South Africa in 1990, adding pressure on the apartheid regime. After Nelson Mandela was freed from prison in 1990, he repeatedly thanked Fidel Castro. On Saturday, the leader of the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola said Castro was like Mandela.
In the world, from time to time, there will be individuals like this who appear, be it in science or politics. These individuals are like our Mandela, and when they leave us with a gap, emptiness and longing. Because for some, Fidel Castro was a dictator, but for us, he was not. He was a revolutionary. Regardless of anything, he was also a charismatic figure. Even his Western enemies respected him. It's difficult for people like that to exist in today's world. These are rare people. They are geniuses.
Many Cubans who fled the regime consider Castro a tyrant who demanded absolute obedience from the Cuban people through censorship of the media and by imprisoning people he deemed antisocial, including dissidents, artists, and members of the LGBT community. In July 2015, President Obama reestablished formal diplomatic relations with Cuba. After Castro's death was announced Friday, Obama released a statement saying, quote, "We know that this moment fills Cubans in Cuba and in the United States with powerful emotions, recalling the countless ways in which Fidel Castro altered the course of individual lives, families, and of the Cuban nation. History will record and judge the enormous impact of this singular figure on the people and world around him, unquote. Donald Trump tweeted, "Fidel Castro is dead!" exclamation point. In Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued a statement that described Castro as larger than life and a remarkable leader, quote, "a legendary revolutionary and orator who made significant improvements to the education and health care of his island nation," unquote. He also noted that his father, Pierre Trudeau, was proud to call Fidel Castro a friend. All of this comes as several major U.S. airlines are beginning commercial flights to Cuba this week. For the first time in 55 years, the first flight is landing today. Today, as we broadcast, that flight is leaving from New York to Cuba. In April of this year, Castro gave what would be his farewell speech. Addressing the closing of a Communist Party Congress in Havana, he defended his record, saying, quote, "Soon I'll be like all the others. The time will come for all of us, but the ideas of the Cuban communists will remain as proof on this planet that if they're worked at with fervor and dignity, they can produce the material and cultural goods that human beings need, and we need to fight without truce to obtain them," unquote. When we come back, we host a roundtable discussion on Fidel Castro's life and legacy. Stay with us.